I'm the Water Services Director for the City of College Station. Thank you all for coming to College Station. It's great to have you here. I'd just like to recognize some of our officials that are in the audience. We have Mayor Pro Tem Dave Rusink, Councilman Blanche Brick, Councilman Carl Mooney. We also have two councilmen from the City of Bryan. Thank you guys for coming. And we have our City Manager, Mr. David Neely, and our brand new Assistant City Manager, Mr. Frank Simpson. Thank you all very much for coming today. We sure appreciate it. Obviously, we're here to talk about water conservation, just to give you an update on where we are and where we're going, because there's a lot of people that really don't know what this groundwater district is or what it's supposed to be doing. I just wanted to start off real quickly before Jennifer tells you about conservation. This is the bill that created this district to regulate the groundwater in both Robertson and Brazos counties. And this is straight from the law that was passed by the state legislature. And as you can see, it's to protect and recharge the groundwater, prevent pollution or waste of the groundwater in this region. Subsidence isn't a big deal, but to regulate the transport of the water outside the boundaries of the district. So far, we don't have any of that, which you don't have to worry about that, but it's a pretty simple mandate from the state, just to make sure that the groundwater is there for our use in perpetuity. That's how I read it. So a little bit of a background on where College Station is in terms of our water usage, our permitted water, and where we're going in the future. Most of you have seen this before. I know, Mr. Russ, you haven't, and Cardi, you may not have, but we completed our Water Master Plan update about a year and a half ago, and it was done by HDR engineers out of Austin. And the conclusions that they came to, they looked at our service area for our water CCN. They looked at the comprehensive plan that we just completed, looked at the various land uses where development was going to occur, and they projected out what the water demands were going to be. Now, those land uses all have a range. It can go from something fairly sparse to something fairly dense. So what we had to do is we had to bracket the question, and as you can see, there's a low estimate and a high estimate. And I've gone ahead and, this is in terms of average day, million gallons a day, because it was more convenient. But I've translated those numbers for you up here. The low end estimate is right about 16,000 acre feet a year. The high end estimate is 28,000 acre feet per year. And so what we did was we decided, those two are not very likely. It's probably going to be somewhere in the middle. So what we did, we set our planning up for 22,000 acre feet per year. Okay. Back about a year ago, we came to the board requesting permits for well number 8 and well number 9. The application package and the aquifer impact study were done jointly and submitted to the board. Included in that request was 8,200 acre feet per year. As you can see, well 8 was 4,300, well 9 was 3,900. That's based on the amount of acreage that we had to go with each of those two wells. So we came to the board and said what we would like to do is ask you to grant 2,500 acre feet per year for well number 8 as an interim measure. That was approved, thank you very much. But we voluntarily reduced the amount requested because we wanted, with that, our total allocation came up to 22,600 acre feet per year. I'm using round numbers, guys. So that number is slightly above the previous projection that we just talked about of 22,000 acre feet per year. So what we said at the time, and it still holds true, we need to see how successful our water conservation efforts are going to be. We need to see how the development occurs, and then we might need more water, we might not, just depending. You know, we don't have a perfect crystal ball. But the board agreed with us that that was prudent planning. And so right now our total allocation of water stands at this 22,600 acre feet per year. The balance of the application, if you take out the 2,500, is 5,700 acre feet. And if we were to get that at some point in the future, it would put our total allocation just over 28,000 acre feet per year, which, by golly, is the same as our high-end estimate. We really don't think that we're going to get there. We might. You never know. So that was how the whole water planning issue was structured, and that's where we stand today with these permits just on ice. So just to reiterate, you know, our current grand total permitted is the 22,600 acre feet. The last 12-month period, we've used about 14,400 acre feet of water. College Station is growing rapidly. We're going to hear more from Mr. Todd McDaniel about development that's happening in this area. We've got the Scott and White Hospital under construction, the bio corridor, the medical corridor initiatives are going forward. And we expect to build out our water service area within 10 to 20 years. So we're talking about a fairly short-term horizon. You know, the state water planning process looks out 50 years. So we're just talking about 20 years. But our goal is to stay within the allocation that we already have. Additional water sources are going to be very expensive. Conservation and reclamation, they're just the right thing to do in terms of preserving our most precious natural resource. We're trying to be as good a steward of that resource as we possibly can. So with that, I would like to introduce Ms. Jennifer Nations, our Water Resources Coordinator, and she'll just kind of quickly run through the water conservation measures that we've implemented.
Thank you, Board. Again, my name is Jennifer Nations, Water Resource Coordinator for the City of College Station Water Services Department. What I want to show you is just an update on some of the water conservation measures. Some of you haven't seen this before. Some of you who've been on the board a while back have seen it. The difference is that we didn't have as many check marks, as many yes marks a couple of years ago. So the only thing that we have left on our list of recommended best management practices is the reuse of treated effluent, and that will be going online later this year in just a few months. So then we'll have all of those in place. These are best management practices that were developed through a peer-reviewed process, and they were recommended through the Water Development Board's Water Conservation Task Force. This is our conservation pricing. More and more cities are going to this sort of pricing because it puts a premium on the high usage. The high usage in the municipal setting is generally going to be irrigation. It's going to be seasonal demand, and so if when the resource is undervalued, it gets wasted, or when the resource is undervalued, it gets overused. So we're putting a premium on the lush lawns, the letting your leaks go unfixed, the not paying attention to your irrigation system. After we put our first set of inclining rates in, there was some discussion about, well, what about the commercial sector? I mean, they're also irrigating. And so last year in October 2010, we added the higher volumetric rate for commercial irrigation. Okay, so we do have some water waste prohibitions. And I just put, that was the hall of shame, if you will, as far as water waste. We've got a picture of algae growing on the sidewalk. We've got a poorly designed irrigation system, a head that was broken off. These are all examples of water waste, and what I've been really trying to do is raise awareness in the community. We do have it in our ordinance, and we have used the ordinance enforcement power before to tell people you have X number of days to fix this, or we're going to cite you 200, and I think it's $250 a day until the violation is corrected. But if we're doing that, then people aren't getting the message that they need to not waste water. So there's a heavy education component, and then if there's some scofflaws, then we have the enforcement as well. This is our water reclamation project. We're very excited to see this come to fruition. I apologize, the slide's a little bit scooted over. So the estimated completion is September 2011 at a cost of about $3.6 million. But the really great thing about this is that reclaimed water has been, and conservation as well, have been described as the cheapest water you will ever have is the water you already have. And Dave mentioned that future water sources will be expensive, so we're trying to get as much bang for our buck, if you will. We're trying to get as much use out of the water that we're already permitted to use and conserve and reuse that as much as possible. So the first site will be Veterans Park, and if you leave this meeting tonight and go down to Harvey Road and then make a left and go all the way out towards Highway 30 heading towards Huntsville, you'll pass Veterans Park on the left and you can see the structures under construction. This is the storage tank that will be used to irrigate. So we'll be pumping treated effluent from the Carter Creek wastewater treatment plant, and it'll be stored in this pre-stressed concrete tank. It's 481,000 gallons, and that'll be enough for them to use on a maximum day, and it's really coming along well. The next slide in the background shows a picture of the finished structure, and you can see it's fairly unobtrusive, and people are using the park. The great thing about reclaimed water is it's a nearly drought-proof water supply because it's coming from a wastewater treatment plant. People are, not to get too graphic, but people will always be flushing their toilets and using their sinks, and that's where this water is coming from. So when we put Veterans Park on this water for irrigation, we'll be saving up to 436,000 gallons a day of precious drinking water. Another conservation program that we have that's still kind of making baby steps is our rain barrel rebates, and then we have plumbing fixture rebates, which I'll discuss in the next slide. And this is very similar to the Groundwater Conservation District's rain barrel rebate program. I did put some guidelines on it just because I didn't want people to apply for a rebate with a 5-gallon bucket with no cover. We want it to be used for non-potable purposes, screen to restrict access from animals, little people, prevent the growth of algae, but I've issued a fair number of those, and I will point out that we still have that going on right now in College Station, and you can get the rain barrel rebate whether or not there is rain in the barrel, because we haven't had a whole lot of that lately. Our plumbing fixture rebates, this is a really good program. We've partnered with the EPA WaterSense program, so we're an EPA WaterSense partner city, and the WaterSense products have been tested to use, they have to use at least 20% less water than their conventional counterpart. They've gone through a third-party testing process, so it's not like the first low-flow toilets that advertised that they didn't use very much water, but then you had to flush them 4 times to get them to work, and so then there goes your savings, literally down the drain. These are all certified to flush only 1.28 gallons per flush, and it's a really big help for people who have older homes that have the higher water use toilets. But if you're building a new home, you can get a 1.6 gallon per flush toilet. That's what the plumbing code requires now. Or we wanted to offer a rebate on new construction to kind of give people an incentive to put that in new construction. And eventually, I think by 2014, these will be the standard in Texas, is the 1.28 gallon per flush toilets. And finally, we also have an irrigation ordinance. We do have a lot of irrigation systems in College Station. People like to have their lawns. They'll put in an irrigation system because it adds to resale value, but it needs to be designed properly. I tell people, irrigation systems don't waste water, people do. You have to be in control of your irrigation controller. And so what this ordinance does, by providing a copy of the as-built plans to the property owner and having a final walkthrough with the system, that homeowner or business owner, if it's at a commercial business, they know where the valves are, they know which zones are supposed to be watered, and when and for how long. There's a sticker placed on the controller, so if for some reason you have, if you're that guy in the previous slide of water waste with a geyser shooting up, I don't know how many feet in the air, you can call that licensed irrigator and have them come out and fix it immediately. It also puts regulations on the design of the system, how far apart the heads have to be, and requires rain sensors on the systems. Again, if and when we ever get rain, this will prevent your system from coming on in the rain. Everybody hates to see that. An irrigation system going off in the rain. So the rain sensors are a really quick and easy, inexpensive way to prevent that. with that, I will turn it back over to Dave. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate that. Just to kind of wrap things up, I just wanted to emphasize that our water conservation efforts have definitely succeeded. One piece of evidence showing that is a couple of years ago, before we had our inclined rates and all these efforts were in place, our max day usage was about 24.7 million gallons in one day. So far this year, even with this terrible drought, our max day has only been a little over 22 million gallons. So it is making a difference. When we get our reclaimed water project done in a few months, that's going to make another big difference. And so, you know, our position is, and I know board members have expressed this, and I appreciate that it wouldn't be right to penalize College Station for saving water. Our water demand hasn't grown as quickly over the last couple of years as we had projected way back because of this, but that's a good thing. And we also contend that the board needs to recognize the need for reasonably foreseeable growth. TCEQ even requires us to do that. When our demand hits 85% of our capacity, we have to get additional resources. Every municipality has to do that. So with that, I just want to say I appreciate your attention, and if you have any questions, be glad to answer them.
Any questions for Dave?
Dave, when is your 22,000 acre feet projection, how far out is that you anticipate you will reach that amount?
Right around 2030. It just depends on the rate of growth. You know, we've projected about 7% rate of growth in the southern area of town, about a 2.5% rate of growth up, you know, in the northern part of town. That's our best guess. You know, historic.
About a 20-year window, somewhere around that.
Right, somewhere between 10, 15, 20 years.
Do you feel that the permits should be based on actual use or for future use?
Well, the historic permits were based on actual use.
Any
And-
permit, I mean, an operating permit.
Yeah, a new permit needs to be based on need, and the board agreed when they granted the permit for well 8 that that was a prudent thing to do.
Well, what about permits in total, aggregate water? What I'm trying to get is, should we, as a board, look just at future growth on some permit holders, or should we look at it overall, permit holders? Future growth of any, regardless, power plant, municipalities, industry, anything, any future growth, should we show it, should the permit holder be able to say, I'm going to have a growth of this much, so I want to go ahead and permit my water out for 10 more years?
TCEQ requires municipalities to do that. For everybody else, that's a board policy decision. That's why I'm on this side of the podium and you're on that side of the podium. That's a policy decision you guys have to make. There's a lot of things that go into that. You know, one of the questions that was raised earlier is aggregating usage between different aquifers. You know, that's a question that has a big impact on that issue. So there's a lot of stuff that plays into that.
Yes, and you were on the board at one time, and at that time, you did second a motion to pull an agriculture permit that had actual usage, and pulled that, revoked that permit. And then now I'm seeing in an article on the College Station website the other day where you named a couple directors that wanted to take water from College Station. And I think that may have been targeted towards me, but David, I don't want to take any water from College Station that they actually need. What I want to be able to do is, when a landowner or someone comes to permit, that we have the water available to permit to them, and meet the needs of the growing cities. And of course, you know, and I got to admit, College Station is leading the way in the district and probably the state as far as your water conservation methods. So, but I think we have, as a board, we have to look at future, any kind of growth, industry, agriculture, municipalities, and yes, it may be in this area right here, but that's what we're saying. As far as growth, we got to regulate the growth, and the water has to remain in the district's hands to be able to use.
Well, this is somewhat analogous to the surface water question that the state went through 30, 40 years ago. It was the exact same issue. There was the question of riparian rights, and the state started to manage the water in the lakes and rivers, surface water, and they came up with a system whereby the water was allocated out. They had senior permits and junior permits to, manage that question. And right now, you have a situation where you've got Dow Chemical down in Freeport that when the flow in the Brazos River starts to diminish, they make a priority call. And TCEQ a few months ago said anybody with a permit 1980 or sooner, stop using the water. Then, just about a week ago, they said anybody with a permit 1960 or newer, stop using the water. And it's that kind of a system that I think would be instructive for us to look at.
And I have river systems, and I did get a letter on that. But at any point, I could call them up and say, hey, I'm not pumping on my permit, but I would like to acquire so many acre feet of water, and then they would release it.
No, they won't, because BRA is sold out right now. They have issued permits for all the water they hold.
You could buy the water once you put it into the river, you could pull it out if you purchase the water.
Yes, as long as you have somebody to purchase it from. Okay.
I'm just saying we're using the river as a pipeline. But let's go back to your TCQ regulation.
Sure.
That does not say that this district has to supply you with that. That means it's a city's obligation, not the district's, correct?
Absolutely correct. Yeah, we have to get it from wherever we can. Yeah, the district obviously is just one option.
Any other questions for Dave?
Would it be possible, Dave, for the board members to go look at the reclamation project?
Oh, love to. Absolutely. Whenever you'd like to set up a field trip, that'd be great. If you want to do it now, it's still under construction, or if you'd rather wait until after the August-September time frame when it's going to be in operation, that might be better. But yeah, whenever you're interested, if you want to do it collectively or individually, we would love to take you down and show it to you.
I move that we accept Dave's report.
Well, motion's been made to accept his report, seconded by Tom McDonald. Any other discussion?
I like the idea of looking at the project at some point in the future. That might be very worthwhile.
I'd like to do that too.
Sure. I've said before, and I'll say it right now, that and others have alluded to it, that College Station's leading the way, it seems to me.
I'd rather Jennifer take you than Dave.
Well, as long as Jennifer goes along, I think they can come along.
You're a smart man.
Dave,
No, that sounds great.
on the water saving appliances, Jennifer, this question may be for you. You can't buy anything but those anymore, can you?
Anything but what? Can you lower your microphone?
The water saving appliances, you can't buy anything but those anymore, can you?
Well, with the changes to the 1994 plumbing code, that required 1.6 gallons per flush toilets and 2.5 gallons per minute flow shower heads, and there's another flow standard for faucets. The water sense standard goes beyond that. So you can't buy anything that flushes higher than 1.6 right now. You can buy something that flushes less, and that's what we're giving the rebate on.
Okay. Any other discussion? We have a motion made and seconded. All in favor of accepting this presentation that Dave and Jennifer, raise your right hand. Opposed? Motion passes.
Great. Thank
Now,
you, gentlemen.
I got to back up just a little bit before we leave this agenda item, Doug,